It is Monday afternoon on this June 11th. Thank you again for tuning in to the 28storms.com and Hurricane Tracker app tropical weather update. It looks as though the tropics are going to remain quiet in the Atlantic Basin for at least another 5 to 7 days, but we're going to start looking beyond this time, and also the odds of development are a little bit higher in the short term in the Eastern Pacific. Starting first with the tropical weather outlooks from the National Hurricane Center, you see nothing in the Atlantic Basin, and the disturbance they were monitoring in the Eastern Pacific, the odds have been lowered down to 10% for development within the next 48 hours. We're not expecting anything from this low pressure area, but we will be switching our attention to potentially new disturbances that develop off the coast of Central America and begin moving west-northwest. Beginning in the Atlantic with the daily satellite review, you see that there's a lot of wind shear based on this water vapor animation, and there's a lot of dry air draped across the Central Atlantic extending westward into the Caribbean and Gulf of Mexico, so no development in the short term. And the highlighted area in the tropical weather outlook in the Pacific is running into a wall of wind shear, so the development chances have gone down to basically zero. If we inch closer to Central America, in the Eastern Pacific we see no more than a few passing showers that extend along the monsoon trough, but there's another area of low pressure that will be exiting the coastline over the next 24 to 48 hours, and some of the models show at least some potential for development, so that could be the next area to watch going into the future. As you can see immediately south of Mexico, the wind shear values are favorable, so any disturbance that does exit Central America will have to be monitored fairly closely. And again, the only reason why the first area of low pressure in the Pacific outlook is dissipating is because it's moving into this wall of shear, but that's more off toward the west. The latest GFS shear forecast for the next several days is also maintaining the upper level ridging. As you can see, especially by 78 hours, it starts to reestablish itself just to the south of El Salvador, and this persists into days 4 and day 5. Switching over to the sea level pressure forecast, at first you can tell that there's really not much going on in the Eastern Pacific, but if we advance into 24 and 48 hours, an area of low pressure does begin to organize to the south of Guatemala and El Salvador, and as we go into days 3 and 4, we definitely see a little bit more deepening in the area of surface low pressure, so this does suggest a slight chance of tropical depression or minimal tropical storm formation, although it must be noted that the GFS has the tendency to overdevelop these areas of low pressure within the monsoon trough, but at the very least we are anticipating the formation of at least a tropical disturbance that could increase the precipitation over the region. You're now looking at a 7-day running animation of the low-level vorticity forecast from the GFS model. You can see the development of that aforementioned disturbance along with another area of low pressure within the intertropical convergence zone, so therefore any disturbance along the monsoon trough is going to be closely watched over the next week or so. Now if we return to the Atlantic Basin and begin searching for signs of development beyond the 5 to 7 day period, the ECMWF is a good way to start off, and this is a look at the low-level 850 millibar vorticity and sea level pressure forecast beginning at day 5, and there's really nothing much to speak of at this current time, but if we advance into day 6 and day 7, we can still make out a very broad area of low pressure, primarily centered over Central America, so we're not going to get any development as long as that low is over land. But as we go into days 8 through 10, we begin to see a little bit added organization over the Bay of Campeche and southern Gulf of Mexico, and by the 10-day forecast period it does have a 1006 millibar surface low located to the northwest of the Yucatan Peninsula. The ensemble pattern being outlined by the ECMWF model runs are also still hinting at the possibility of a favorable pattern with ridging over the eastern seaboard at 500 millibars, and a subsequent area of low pressure trying to form in the Bay of Campeche and southwest Gulf of Mexico. A look at the GFS ensemble average is also supportive of a similar pattern in potentially some western Caribbean or southern Gulf of Mexico mischief beyond day 5. We're beginning at 48 hours and there's really not much in the way of ridging over the U.S. eastern seaboard at this time, but as we advance into day 4, day 6, and day 8, we definitely see a return of ridging over the Great Lakes and southeast Canada, which is a favorable pattern. And sure enough, by day 8 we also have an area of low pressure forming in the western Caribbean and southern Gulf of Mexico, with those pressures lowering to 1004 and 1005 millibars respectively, and advancing even deeper into day 9 and day 10. Also notice that the western Atlantic ridge is nosing itself westward into the southeast Gulf of Mexico, so we should see added surface convergence in the western Caribbean and southern Gulf, so this will be the area to watch down the road. In addition, all model members continue to support the idea that the favorable phase of the Madden-Julian Oscillation will be moving into phases 8, 1, and 2, and especially once you get into phases 1 and 2, this is when the MJO becomes prime for development on our side of the globe. We're talking about the Eastern Pacific, Gulf of Mexico, and Caribbean Sea. So development is far from a guarantee, especially since we're talking about a 5 to 10 day forecast. But if there's going to be any tropical disturbances worth watching in the Atlantic Basin over the next 10 to 12 days, it will more than likely be centered in those aforementioned areas. So thank you for watching today's video. Keep it tuned to the Hurricane Tracker app for daily video uploads, along with 28storms.com and our social media pages. As you can see, we often frequently update the page with frequent weather news and information. So thank you and have a good afternoon.